recently somebody said to me, this is a very good title, Mary, but the trouble is, we know we should think right, eat right, move right, but we don't. Now, if that's the case, I hope my straightforward, non-gimmicky recommendations will make it a lot easier. So here we go. I also, maybe nobody in this audience, but I half expected that somebody would be wondering, why do we need yet another self-help book? Because we're flooded with them, aren't we, really? I mean, they come out every few months. Now, I hope I can tell you that my book is different in 3 ways. The first way is different is me, I think, because here I am, I hope living proof of my recommendations in the book. And at 87.5, I would love to be able to say 3/4, but I'm not. I'm not quite there yet. I have to wait till December for that. I'm actually fitter and healthier than I was at 29, when I was 24 pounds heavier. Can you imagine that? Horrendous. And until a friend home from abroad shocked me into action by dragging me to the scales. My weight fell off, and I didn't look back, but that was only the beginning. If I'd taken the weight off just to please my friend, it would have come straight on again, because sadly we went our separate ways shortly after that. Anyway, that's the first. Well, I mean, of course, I carried on though. You see, I mean, I was so pleased with my newfound figure, if you like, and abundant energy that my motivation continued, because as we all know, you have to do it for yourself in the end, don't you? Not for somebody else. So that's the first reason why I think my book is different. Now, the second reason is, although this is slightly misleading, because here I am doing an exercise, in actual fact, I concentrate most about how we think in the book, hence the larger font. I wanted it bigger, but the artist said, and he was right really, that it would unbalance the cover if we had it any bigger. So I hope you notice that Think Right is bigger than the other two. That's because I regard the way we think as the most important factor, really, because it influences everything we do, doesn't it? Come to the horrible realization that many of us are ruled by our appetites and emotions. And you see, this happens to a lot of us at different stages in our life, and what we don't realize is that it affects our behavior patterns. And if it carries on and we don't realize what's happening, because it can all be below conscious level, this can cause hidden reactions to take place in the body systems, which, if we are negative and don't correct these, in the end it leads to dis-ease, lack of ease, but that is what disease really is. Like the ancient Greek physicians, such as Hippocrates, and current day naturopaths who seem to have vanished. I don't know where they've gone to, but they concentrated mostly on the root causes of disease, not symptoms, that most people just want to get rid of symptoms, but it just keeps the waste products and everything still in the body. So that's why we've got so many chronic diseases, really. I believe that health, mental, physical, spiritual, is balance. Balanced thoughts, balanced nutrition, and balanced movement. Hence the title of the book. Balanced thoughts, motives, and beliefs affect absolutely every part of our life, don't they? Including what and how we eat and how active we are mentally and physically. It was Einstein, I believe, who said that thought power is the strongest power in the universe, and I firmly believe that. Everything stems from thought, really. Then there's balanced nutrition from fresh, natural foods and water. Lots of people forget water. If we eat these in a balanced way and make sure that our energy intake matches our energy output, this enables us to keep our weight stable. But that does involve eating regular meals and drinking enough water. And I know a lot of people find this very difficult and challenging, so this is one of the things that I'm happy to answer questions about afterwards, in actual fact, because I don't want to drone on too long. Then we come to balanced movement, and by that I mean posture, You see, correct posture is the joints, rather like the... You know, no, but I think you know what I'm going to say. It's like the floors of a house, you see. You know, head on shoulders, shoulders on hips, and hips over ankles, you see. And also stretching up from here, because I'm so short, you know, that I have to be very careful to do this. And we all should do this, really, to lift from here, because the force of gravity is acting on us all day long, really, isn't it? It's only when we're in bed that, whoopsie, I knew that would happen. I've gone past that anyway. Anyway, posture, effective exercise, and even breathing. I'm a great one for even breathing. So, effective exercise, you see, this is another bugbear. A lot of people don't like doing regular exercise, do they? I quite understand that. I used to run masses of exercise classes and yoga classes, not so many now, and I've devised a little routine for myself. I do 2 exercises in bed, so you know what I do in the morning down at Northam, and 2 before I get out of the bath, and then I do 1 when I'm going through a door frame, so that gets me started for the day. But of course I'm walking around London anyway, and hopefully I do teach exercises still, but everybody needs to find a way, don't they, of fitting in enough movement in their day. I mean, some people, those of my relatives who live in the country, are very active anyway, so they don't need my advice. So you can ask me questions about all this later. Now, the third thing that makes my book different, and maybe it's the most significant for you to decide, is that although it's not meant to be an autobiography, and 1 or 2 people thought it was, but I do include specific aspects of my personal life deliberately, because they're aspects that gave me hassle, a great deal of hassle in my early life, and I had to grapple with these, you know, over a long period of time, really. And I found that in my work with students and clients, they were triggered into doing something about their own problems by hearing some of my experiences, you see. So that's my excuse for including parts of my life story, but I've edited it very well, so I hope you won't get sick to death of it. There is a purpose in it, and if you disagree, you can always ask me. In my 20s and 30s, you see, I faced problems with work, relationships, and health. And I also had a whole lot of questions that I could not find answers to. I'm always saying to people that I had 1,001 questions, you see, and that's, you know, almost true. At the time, I was working at Bart's as a medical social worker. This was in the 50s, by the way, and I was working mainly with cancer patients who were terminally ill, sadly, and there was not so much care. Well, there was care because the hospice movement was still working, alive, I mean, but there were not so many treatments available, certainly not so many medicines available, and probably not so such spectacular surgery as today. And I was asking questions rhetorically, you know, how can a good God allow such suffering? And I was also asking, why can't the doctors do more, and so on and so forth. And sadly, I didn't really get any satisfaction from either the church or the medical profession. So, because I was so desperate, I was driven to seek answers in different areas. And this is actually when I first came across Watkins, funnily enough, in that period. And I got a great deal of help from here, and also from a college in Kent called the College of Spiritual Psychotherapeutics. It's a long word, but in that college, and I studied there as at the summer school for several years. In the end, actually, I found answers to all my questions, which is more than a lot of people can say. People often give up halfway, don't they? Because, you know, it isn't easy to find all one's answers. I also was attracted to natural therapies in that period, and looking back, I realised that this was probably triggered by the fact that in my late teens I persuaded my parents to allow me to take the Dr. Bates' Better Sight Without Glasses. Now, in today's world, with all the contact lenses and stuff, nobody's really interested in that. But in my era, you see, we wore these hideous glasses, and there was nothing else, and it was a miracle. I mean, my eyes got completely normal, which most people don't believe. I know now that my left eye has gone a bit lazy, so that's possibly my fault. But but my eyes are still better than most people's at my age, dare I say it. I discovered yoga, you see. All these therapies were practically unknown in that era, as was esoteric philosophy, really. I mean, people thought everybody was nuts who was interested, but now it's quite commonplace, isn't it? Anyway, I discovered yoga, which we couldn't call yoga at Elizabeth Arden's because nobody would have come to the classes. So we had to call it special or deep relaxation or something. But anyway, and visible light therapy, which is also known as colour therapy, again, it seems to have gone out of vogue now, but that was very much to the fore in the 70s. And reflexology, of course, everybody knows about. And biochemic tissue salts. They seem to have semi-vanished because of all these regulations from Europe, but any really good homeopathic chemist still stocks them, and they're tiny little mineral salts that are dissolved through the roof of the mouth, so get into the body very quickly, and they're very useful for common ailments. You see, I was drawn to these, I think, because when I was at Bart's, I had a very bad reaction to one of the early antibiotics, and I think it put me off them for life, frankly. I'm very sensitive, you see. I was in the stomach and in many other ways, so I think that's the reason. Anyway, so I've always recommended them, and I've used them all my life. Metamorphosed from a medical social worker into a natural health therapist, and from a regular churchgoer into somebody who actually believes in reincarnation, the oneness of the universe, and in particular, the closeness of the invisible stroke spiritual world in daily life. I mean, I get examples of this all the time, and if later on anybody wants to know about some of these, some of them, one or two are quite spectacular. I'm happy to tell you. Now, because I'm probably, I know I'm the oldest person in the room, I probably should say something about aging. And I firmly believe that if we think right, eat right and move right, we will slow down the aging process anyway. But some people, you see, seem to think that age in itself is a disease. Well, that's rubbish, isn't it? I mean, I know that luck and circumstance and heredity have something to do with this, but not really, I don't think, as much as we think. And I think it's far more to do with our ability to sustain our interest in life, frankly. So there we go. So I think that's about all I need to say, and I would like questions. If any of you feel stiff sitting all this time, you can stand up and stretch, or you can stand up and sit down. I don't want anybody to fall flat on their face, but Jan said to me once, well, let's do some exercises, Mary. So you see, it's your fault, Jan. So you see, stand up, sit down is a very good exercise. I mean, I haven't left myself. You see, look, it's a very good exercise. I get a lot of people to do this, especially elderly, but there aren't many elderly people in here.
Mary, could you tell us a little bit about your experiences with the unseen world?
Thank you, Susan. Yes, you see, it wasn't the first, but the most spectacular was when I was in the throes of this relationship that I call a codependent relationship. I knew I had to resolve it and get out of it, but I couldn't see my way out of it. And the man in question, I know for a fact that I was blaming his mother, not totally for the state he was in, but quite a lot. In the middle of one night, I was awake. You see, it all depends whether people believe me or not. I promise you I was awake, and I felt a warm current going up and down my spine, like a healing, really, but it did not come from a physical presence. It came from somewhere else. And from that moment on, and this is perfectly true, not only did I not feel resentment towards this lady anymore, but I've never felt resentment toward anybody since. Now, I think that's quite startling. But the first experience I had, and this is not so spectacular, when, how old was I? It was in 1951, so if you can work it backwards now, I'm 87 and a half. I was a very shy little person, really, in those days, and I attended this church where we had a youth service every year, and the minister's wife asked me if I would, horror of horrors, if I would stand in the pulpit and say what the church and Jesus, etc., meant to me. I felt I had to say yes, but I had no idea what I was going to say. But I went to my parents' home for the weekend, and truthfully, the words seemed to be given to me. But more than that, I promise you, I was lifted. Now, in those days, coming to London from where we come from, you had to come on a Maidstone and District bus, which took about 3 hours, something ghastly. So there I was going up to London, spent the night wherever it was I was living, and the next day was Sunday, I think. I can't quite remember whether it was the same day or not. But anyway, walking into the pulpit, saying my piece, coming down again, and several days in the next week, I was still on this other energy level. See, how do you explain that? And then going further forward, when I took part in this Keep Fit series on the television, this was 1973, I was the only one who hadn't done television before, you see. And I experienced it again. When I was standing in the wings to go on set and do my piece, again I was lifted up above nerves on another energy level, which lasted again the whole week. This was mildly spoilt by the fact that I was working at Bart's, not at Bart's, sorry, I'm going mental. I was working at the Berkeley, you see, 2Bs, the Berkeley Hotel, and I had a member of staff, a man, who I think resented me, really, because I was a woman, and he was full of praise for me, my performance on the television, but he said, just one thing, Mary, he said, you looked very nervous in a certain point. Now, I know why that was. I stupidly looked at the wrong camera, you see. Easily done with a novice, and Susan will understand this. And so it made me look nervous, but I wasn't actually, so, I mean, that's just by the way. You see, this is what I think. If you lead a relatively stressful life, and you live in a city with all the, so-called rubbish that's around, pollution that's stuff, and you can't always get meals that consist of a large amount of vegetables. Most people don't eat anything like enough vegetables. I'm sure Carlo does, but I don't know that anybody else. Oh, my sister probably does, and my brother-in-law, but I'm not sure. Oh, Susie probably does. This Susie here, but a lot of people don't. And I know that at a certain point in my life, when I was more or less working 24 hours a day, I couldn't have survived without vitamin and mineral pills. I do still take them because my weakness is in this area here. I mean, I used to get grotesque colds every year, ghastly ones with nosebleeds a lot, and touch wood. I don't know where the wood is, but my head will do. I don't anymore, and that's largely due to the fact that I'm a firm believer in vitamin C, but I'm also a firm believer. Well, I'm a firm believer in a balanced vitamin and mineral tablet, but not everybody needs it. You see, some people lead very balanced, quiet lives, and Susie, you see here, lives on a fruit farm and fabulous cook and provides marvellous food, which her daughter will agree to, I'm sure. Where's her daughter gone? No, sorry, there she is. You see, but speaking personally, I do. And I think anybody under stress, I mean, if we're under serious stress, the B's go out of the body, and so do the C's, because they're water soluble, you see. Other vitamins can be stored, but B's and C's can't. See? There you go. But you want to buy, if you do buy them, buy natural ones, because a lot of things sold in chemists, dare I say it, are actually synthesized, and they don't contain the whole thing, and they're not, and you need more to get the same benefit, see? So
that was what I was going to ask you.
Tissue salts are minerals, you see.
Oh, I see.
Now, vitamin and mineral supplements, some of them are vitamins, aren't they? And some of them are minerals. The advantage of the tissue salts is that they go through the roof of the mouth,
right.
Whereas the others go through the digestive system, don't they? you see.
I was thinking more in terms of...
Short, Susan. See, tall people, I think as long as they're eating a balanced diet, and this gives me an opportunity to mention a little bit what I meant by that, if we eat foods in the following descending order, vegetables, fruit, protein, whole grain carbohydrates and fats. I mean, I have a little butter and olive oil, but, you know, it's a personal choice, really. You have to guard against, by the way, these polyunsaturated fats because they have been refined and they can go off, you see. They can be worse than too much lard and all that stuff. So that's why I... So in that order, then most reasonably tall people probably don't need to count calories, but I still do. I mean, it became a habit, you see, and I probably am just making an educated guess, really. And you know how on the back of foodstuffs it says that a woman can eat 200 calories a day and a man 2,500. Well, I promise you, I'd be out to here if I had 200 calories a day. See? So that's why I think I have to. But I don't nitpick. I mean, I kind of got used to what I should eat now, so I kind of know, but I do have a rough idea of what, you know, of what certain foodstuffs are in calorie form. Cassandra here was my right-hand person. All those years ago, you've all heard me, no, I better not mention her name in public, but I did have a publisher years ago in the 1980s who was going to publish my magnum opus, and it really was a magnum opus. And then suddenly, out of the blue, she went bankrupt, and of course, as always happens, I was the last person to know. So there I was with all this stuff. It had taken me years to get to that point anyway. What was I going to do? So I went into mourning, really. and then Paul here, who was working with Cassandra, introduced me to Cassandra, and Cassandra and I worked, didn't we, for ages and ages and ages, producing what eventually became my workbooks, which I sold to my clients. So part of it is in here, but no, this isn't the whole of what I've written. But you see, I realised, and this is partly with the help of Julia from South Africa, who is like a surrogate granddaughter, really. She is a distant relative anyway, who kind of got all enthusiastic and said, Mary, we've got to do something about, you know, she saw the workbooks, we've got to put them into a form that the 21st century can appreciate, you know, blah, blah. So this is what we tried to do. So this is the result, really. I mean, I start off by saying that it's the story of my search for meaning in life, which it truly is. So it does contain a lot of what we worked on, but it doesn't contain it all. And this has taken so long that I hope this is it. But who knows? Who knows? We don't know what lies in the future, do we? Any of us, you see. Stigmatism. See, I had to wait until I'd passed all my exams. I was school in the wartime. So we took our exams younger than people do today. Well, I'd done my higher school certificate at the age of 17 and a half or something, you see, which is the equivalent to A-levels, I suppose. And I persuaded my parents to let me do this because I don't know who told me. Some fairly close relative told me about it. And I was very enthused. My dear mother was very sceptical, but that made me try even harder. So being wartime, my poor father had to come up from the country, take me to these ladies in Hanover Square or wherever it is. And what it really entailed was doing exercises to exercise the muscles, but also to learn not to strain the eyes, you see. And it worked a treat. I can't remember now how long it took. Possibly something like 6 to 8 weeks, but there was gradual improvement, and it was brilliant, totally and utterly brilliant. And then, I mean, I was sold on natural therapies from that moment on, really. So I'm very pleased, Eaton, to know it's resurging. You see, it's like colour therapy. Colour therapy, I think it initiated in India donkeys years ago, and then it came into America, I think, in the 1800s or whatever it was, and then it came over here, and I first discovered it in the 70s. And, but I don't know. See, a lot of these things have their day, and then they slightly vanish. But I mean, I've written a little bit about it in here, but because this is meant to be a self-help book, you see, coming back to the work we did together, a lot of the stuff we did can't be in here because it wasn't self-help really, so there you go.